This is a special episode today about how speaker volume level works. So how do we hear volume and what is the physics used to describe it? So when you hear sounds, they are represented in the dB scale, which is a logarithmic scale. So it means that if you want to hear something that is twice as loud, the energy required is not twice but much more. Some people say you need 6 dB more to hear double volume, others say you need 10 dB to perceive it as the volume changed to twice as much the volume. And there's no simple answer to that, and both of these people are right and none of these are right, and we shall see why, how much exact change is needed to have a perception of a doubled volume. So as you see here, if you have an amplifier, let's say it's playing at 100 watts and you crank it to 200 watts instead, it just adds 3 dB. So if visually that would be your volume, so instead of sounds we are looking at a picture, it will not be heard twice as loud, just a little bit louder. So here this represents like hearing it twice as loud, and there's a big change. If you just add double the power, it's just a little bit louder but not nearly as much as you need. So at a normal high level listening, if you want twice as loud listening, you need to increase your power 10 times. So instead of 100 watt, you will need 1000 watt for that change. Going to 200 watts, you can barely notice that the volume has increased. Now let's look at the picture, why there's a confusion between 6 dB or 10 dB needed for volume doubling. It's because the amount of dB needed to hear something as much louder depends on the volume you are listening. So when we look at very quiet sounds, 0 dB is the limit that you cannot hear, and 30 dB is almost like a very quiet conversation. So if you are in a library and you are talking at 30 dB, and the noises in the library would be in this range between like 20 dB and 30 dB. And if you change the volume at this level, at the 30 dB level by 1 dB, it's already very noticeable. So here, to perceive a doubling in the volume, 2 dB maybe, you already hear it. If someone like speaks 2 dB higher, it feels like you are talking twice as loud. So at this range, you don't, if you have a 10 dB change in the volume, it suddenly feels as if you are almost shouting and people will shush you in the library if you ramp up to 10 dBs at this volume. So when we are looking at mid volumes, so 35 to 60 dB, and I would say that this is if you listen to a movie, even at a loud volume, this is where most of the dialogue will be at, between 35 to 60 dB. So if you are watching, like, let's say Lord of the Rings, and then the characters are talking here, and then the sound effects will be like 70 to 90 dB loud. But this is the range that we normally talk at during daytime, and here 3 dB change is already very noticeable, and if there's a 3 dB change, it feels like a 1 dB change at 30 dB. And when we are talking about loud volume, so this is when we are shouting. Here the changes are much more prominent, so it feels like if you need a change of 6 dB to be equivalent to a 3 dB change at normal speaking level, or a mere 1 dB change at the quiet levels. And when we go for very loud, This is like getting to the symphony orchestra loud levels. Here you need a 10 dB change to have the feeling of the same that you have changed 6 dB at just watching Witcher at home, and you hear the sound effects at Witcher. Or if you are just talking in your normal voice, a 3 dB change. So you see, a 3 dB change at 60 dB feels the same difference as a 10 dB change at 120 dB. And let's now look into what happens when you listen to very loud music, which is like 120, 130 dB, which we already can hear that, oh, this is maybe hurting my ears. If you crank up your stereo to that volume, you will be complaining that your ear is hurting. However, the sound pressure doesn't harm your ear physically, so it doesn't do anything to your ear to cause damage. What happens is that when you hear sounds, the louder you hear them, the more rapidly the neurons fire in your auditory canal. And because of the rapid firing, the neurons will receive oxidative damage, and they will have to recover from that. So it's a biochemical process that happens because of loud volumes, and then you need recovery. And your ears hurting is not because they are hurting. It's a neurological thing that your brain is telling you to avoid loud noises because you need recovery time. And for that recovery, you need antioxidants. So if you are taking vitamin C before you go to a loud concert, you are already prepping your body to recover from that shock faster. And basically, if you allow your ears to recover, the neurons to recover from that oxidative shock, then you will not damage your ears. But if you do this repeatedly and your ears cannot recover, then some of the neurons will die in your auditory system, and that's when permanent hearing damage happens. So basically the message from that is, if you listen very loud, then take care of your ears, take antioxidants, and wait until your ears fully recover, until you crank the volume up again. So now let's see, how does volume control work. So previously we have seen that dB change is not fixed for every volume level. So when you go to a very soft listening volume, then 1 dB change is already audible, and to have the same effect at very loud levels you need 5 dB change. So that's why if you have a stepped attenuator with 2 dB steps, like many of the autoformer, transformer or devices do, like AVCs and TVCs, and they have like 2 dB fixed steps, that doesn't really work, because when you go very soft, 2 dB step is already too big. So when you listen to whisper soft, then a 2 dB step is already a big jump. You want the scale there to be much finer. So if you make an autoformer or transformer based volume control unit, then you want 1 dB steps at the low end of the scale. And also, if you go to loud levels, then a 2 dB step is nothing. So that's why people will have to like crank your volume knobs a lot at the end of the scale, because 2 dB change is nothing. You go 1 click and you don't even notice that anything changed. You need to like 3-4 clicks to have any effect at the loud volumes. So interestingly, this is another phenomenon. So as we see that the ear is really sensitive to what volume we are listening at. So that's why if there is a recording and we record it at a specific volume, and if we play back the same recording at a quieter volume, it will feel compressed. And even if the recording was recorded with 0 compression, and you have a perfect system that can render it without any compression, it will be still compressed because it's playing softer than it was recorded at. However, if you play it louder than it was recorded, then it will get expanded, and in either case it will not sound natural, it will not sound as it was played, and your ear will pick up that it's not normal. So that's why there's a stress on it, that to have the same experience, no, you won't have the same experience, but to have the same dynamic range as the original recording, you need to play it back at the same volume where it was recorded at. Of course you can play quieter, it's usually better for your ears because most systems introduce distortion, but then you will feel compression happening. And if you have very high efficient speakers, then this compression will not be so apparent. But if you have low sensitivity speakers, then this compression will be extremely apparent, more severe than just the effect of the volume knob. So why does all of these things happen? Let's check my timer. So this happens because the ear, if you play a note at the same volume, and if you change the frequencies, you go from lowest stance to highest, and it's playing at the exact same energy level, you will not hear it as the same volume. If you go, let's see, like 40 phone level, then that's like a normal speaking voice level. So this region, like between like a couple hundred hertzes to a couple kilohertzes, this is our normal speaking range. So this is where we hear speech. It will be around average 40 dB level, so that corresponds to 40 phones. And if we go higher, around 3-4 kilohertz, you will feel that it's quieter, but it didn't get quieter, just your ear sensitivity is going down, and then it will go, you will need higher and higher energy to feel that it's the same volume level. So basically at 3-4 kilohertz you will feel that it's much louder if you play it at 40 dB instead of 40 phone, and if you are at 10 kilohertz, then you need, let's just check how much you need, like almost 60 dB, like 55 dB to hear it at the same volume as a 40 dB 1 kilohertz signal. And why is this? You see, this 3-4 kilohertz, this is where children speak. That's the main frequency range of kids' voices, of little children, and that's why we have an extra sensitivity in that region to hear the children better. If they are in danger, in trouble, we can notice that before there's a loud bang, which would be in the low frequencies. Let's say there's an earthquake, and the loud earthquake sounds is just has tremendous energy. But even if there's like 100 dB loud earthquake, which has energy like a couple million times greater than the human speech, and then your kid starts crying, you will be still able to hear that, and that's because of this curve in the ear. So when you look at these loudness charts, equal loudness contours, and you think that, oh, why the hell did nature come up with this BS? Like, come on, can't we just hear 40 dB flat, and then we can have a perfect 40 dB flat loudspeaker hooked up and everything would sound right? Yeah, sure, but there's an earthquake, you will lose your kids. So pick your choice, nature did it for us. And so that's why our hearing is most sensitive at where the kids talk. And you see 1.5 kilohertz, this is where our ears are least sensitive, so this is where your wife is speaking. That's why you can't hear when your wife tells you things, because your ears are not so sensitive there. So if she tells you like, oh, I didn't hear to take out the trash, you just show her the equal loudness contour curve and said, Darling, you didn't say it loud enough. So that's why. And for the high frequency sounds, the sensitivity is vastly decreased because they have tremendous energy, and there's a lot of high frequency sounds around us. And if we don't want to go mad, we want to have much lower sensitivity for those regions. If this curve was flat, we would not be able to hear each other talk, because the high frequencies would be drowning out our conversation, and the low frequencies would be drowning it even more. And that's why low frequency sensitivity is even worse than the high frequency sensitivity, to protect the ears. And there's another reason for that, is that we are not equipped well to hear low sensitivity sounds. To hear like 20 hertz or below 20 hertz, you would need bigger ears. And the elephants do hear in that region, and look at the earlobe of an elephant. So to have like really good sensitivity in very low frequencies, you need ears the size of an elephant. And of course we do not have that. That's why the size of our ears corresponds to this region, and that's why we have the most sensitive hearing in this region. But there's something interesting going on. If this is like an average speaking level, if you drop it to whisper quiet, then you see we can hear children. If they are like talking in a library, even if they're talking much quieter than you are, you can still hear them much better. And that's why you always have to hush children. And it's not just they talk loud, but your ear sensitivity is much greater to them. And especially, check this out here, the dump is not as big. Here it's like a huge dump. It means that your ear sensitivity is way greater to children if it's dead quiet around you. Then the kids make the smallest noises, you will right away hear it. If your wife says something, nah. So here at these quietest levels, you need 70 dB of 20 hertz just to be able to notice that there's a 20 dB sound going on. If it's like a 60 dB 20 hertz sound, you don't even notice 20 hertz. So that's why we need tremendous amounts of energy to hear the low frequencies, because they need much more energy than your mid-range. And at whisper quiet, the difference is 60 dB, and when we go louder, this difference changes. So when you go to 100 dB or 100 phone level, which corresponds to 100 dB at 1 kilohertz, then you need only 30 dB more 20 hertz to hear it the same volume as a 1 kilohertz sound. So you see, between 30 dB and 60 dB, there's a 1000 times change in difference. And this is why loudness was invented and was used in the stereo gear in the 70s, 80s, because when you go quieter, then you need more bass. And also, as you see here, the high end, you need more top end as well, just to be able to hear it at all. So if you adjust loudness, then that will make your ear believe that your recording was recorded at that level, so it becomes more enjoyable. And here there's something really interesting going on, and this is a huge warning for us. So the blue curve was the old curve that was measured a couple decades ago, and now the red one is the new curve that was revised in 2003. So I think if they would revise it now, it would look even worse, because as you see, there's a change between the curves. So which means that the common reference point is at 1 kilohertz, and when we here we have like a peak here, which means that we hear somewhat better in this region, hold on. So it means that when it goes up, your hearing is not as good. So you need louder, like plus 3 dB, to hear it at the same level as your parents' generation heard it. And then you will need here at 10 kilohertz like 5-6 dB more to hear it at the same level. And at the base there is a 10 dB difference. So this is how our hearing has declined within one generation. This is not good, and that's because we are listening to too loud CRAP. And also reflects the worsening of the quality of your audio gear, because I'm not talking about this now, but it will be part of a future episode. It's not the loudness that damages the ear, it's the poor quality of your stereo system that injects too much noise and distortion at the high frequencies, and that tires your ear and wears it down over the decades and makes your ear sensitivity get weaker. So that's why it's absolutely critical to have the right stereo to protect your ear, so that this curve doesn't keep on increasing and increasing. And this, especially in the bass, it happens because you use too much of your sub. So if you never used a subwoofer before and you add the sub to your system, this is what will happen to your hearing, that it will start to decline and you will need to crank the bass higher and higher and higher. And that's what's happening. If you live in the US in an average house or home in average neighborhood, you hear that all your neighbors are cranking their fucking subwoofers, and it's just a bloody nightmare. And the side effect for that on the long term is that our hearing responds, so that the ear adjusts to hear those annoying, disturbing low frequencies less and less. But that will result in your neighbors cranking their subs even more. So it's a vicious circle that can be only stopped by better quality sound equipment and educating people more. So I have a little note here that here we have like a 60 dB difference between hearing 1 kilohertz and 20 hertz. It means that that's the change of 1,000,000 times in energy. So if you play volume music at this volume and you play it at 1 milliwatt, let's say, then for this to be heard at the same volume, you need 1000 watts. So you need more than that. Yep. So that much more watts than is required to play it. Yep. I said it right. So anyway, the lesson for that is, actually we'll go into it later, that when you go like super quiet listening, there's only very little power needed, just milliwatts or even here microwatts. Or if you have a very sensitive speaker like 100 dB plus to play at this level, you need nanowatts to play at that level. And that's why it's important to have really low level resolution and detail level, because if during the quiet passages in the music, you don't need thousands of watts, you need microwatts, clear microwatts. And if your amp cannot even do the first watt good, what does it do to a microwatt, right? So actually that's the reason why many of the showrooms play music extremely loud, because if they crank it down to a quiet level, certainly you hear that there's no detail level at the low sounds. So it means that the system cannot play quietly. So you will be forced to stay on a track to just blast your ears. So let's see what compression does to recording. So the compression, it's like squeezes it from top to bottom. So our poor creature just gets squeezed. And if you change the volume, that squeezing stays there. And that's not too good, and because you will never hear it as the right dynamic range. But if you crank it like super loud the same thing happens as with a visual picture. So if it's like small and not the right aspect ratio, then it's hard for you to tell what's that thing. Is it a chihuahua? Is it a bunny? Or what is that? And if you blow it up, it's still distorted, but you can tell that this is not a bunny. Definitively. So that's why with compression comes increase in loudness, and because music industry today compresses everything extremely, that's why people play it so bloody loud, because otherwise if you play them, you cannot play this music quietly. It has to be blasted absolutely for our brain to make any kind of sense out of it. And the question is, can you play louder with your equipment? Are your speakers and amplifiers suitable to play at the loud level? Will it damage your ear? You'll find it out in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and please like if you like and subscribe if you want to hear more of it. Thank you.